Hey, family. Welcome back to another episode of Unmute Your Mic podcast. I'm so glad to have you here with me and have you here with me live. And we are talking about something today that I know most of you who are in relationships try to avoid, but today you're going to have to face it. And that word is argument. I know. So let's go ahead and gather yourself and get it ready because we're about to talk about it. So, what if I told you that the things you're arguing about currently in your relationship has nothing to do with money, who did the dishes, who didn't do the dishes, tone, or even the last thing you said? What if I told you the reason you are still having the same arguments is because you are actually arguing about old, unhealed pains that happened before you met your person, and pains that are resurfaced and retriggered sometimes when you say certain things. And so now you're like, why is everything I say getting taken out of context? Because you're not arguing with the issue at hand. You're arguing with the issue you weren't even a part of in another life, in another season. So what tends to happen when we're arguing with old pain is we begin to fight with each other instead of for each other. But today, in our session, we are going to learn how to fight for each other, not with each other. So I hope you're ready. And if this is your first time here, welcome to Unmute Your Mic podcast, the space where the strong ones finally get to feel safe. And I cannot wait to talk about this conversation. I am your host and your favorite coach, relationship coach, Coach Lauren J. And today's topic is called You Are Arguing About Pain, Not Problems. So I hope you're ready. Drop something in the chat if you are. Those who are listening, you like, wait, I want to talk about it. We about to talk about it. So let's set the scene. I have sat with couples who love God, right? As a relationship coach, and I've been doing this, I've been coaching since 2019 with couples, with individuals. I have sat with couples who they love God, they even love each other, but they don't know how to communicate in a way that it connects them with their partner, or sometimes in a way of how it connects them with God. And so what I have found over my years of working with individuals and couples are that they're loyal, they're committed, but they're also exhausted. And so because they don't know like how to love each other and how to really be able to have a conversation about the issue without other things surfacing that have nothing to do with the conversation, what I have found over the years is that they end up bleeding on each other instead of dealing with the deeper wounds. And so when we don't have total knowledge of a person's life and the things that they've gone through, and even sometimes when we've had it and you kind of know what's happened in their childhood, oftentimes we don't still hold space for that childlike version of them. And so we will find ourselves arguing about the same things. And we're like, I'm over talking about this. And it's because we're not dealing with the old wounds. So let's get into it because we're about to go there. So here's what I have found out about high functioning adults that we do not like to admit. I say we because child is them. Your girl is definitely a recovering high function. I have been her, and sometimes I've been him. So I get it. So let's talk about why we don't want to admit that we bring our childhood into our marriage. We bring our father wounds into our tones, and we bring our mother wounds into our expectations. I'm going to say that one more time for somebody who just heard like, ooh, clock that, clock that, clock that. Let's clock it. We bring into our marriages and into our relationships, period, our childhood wounds, and we will bring our father's tone and our mother's expectations to our relationship. And then we'll take it a step further and we will bring rejection into our defensiveness. And so that becomes the thing that drives us. And then we'll bring those of us who've struggled with abandonment into our overreactions. And you'll think that you're arguing about one thing when you're really arguing about something completely different. So I'm going to give you some of the things that you probably have heard in your relationship that you've been arguing about. And let me know which one needs to land for you. You never listen. How many times have you heard that? You never listen to me. Or how many times have you heard you're always on your phone? Mm, how many of you have heard you don't prioritize me? I know you have heard at least one of those three. But what if I told you that underneath it is a 10-year-old version of yourself, if it's you, and your partner, if it's them? And what they're really trying to say that they haven't said is, please don't leave me. Please don't dismiss me. Please don't make me feel invisible again. And so instead of saying that, they get louder, their tongue get a little sharper, right? We be going below the belt. When they go high, we go higher. Or they get very cold because pain doesn't show up soft. So if you're like, well, why is it this hot and cold? Is it because pain doesn't show up soft? It shows up protective. And let me say that again, because I know that just bless somebody. Pain does not show up soft. So for those of you that are waiting for this to be a soft space to land when pain is involved, it doesn't show up soft. It shows up very protective. And so because of that, that is what you're actually fighting about in your relationship. And anytime pain shows up and it is you're being protective of yourself, you're going to always be the same person who hears things differently than what is actually being said. It's going to always trigger your abandonment trauma. It's going to always trigger your defensiveness because it's the way that you're hearing it. And so pain, again, it's not soft. And so what happens is you're telling me how you feel, but you are condemning me in the same breath. When we say stuff like you never listen. Well, clearly that's not true. Because that's why words are so important. Because when you say things like you never listen, well, then how did they listen to get with you in the first place? I mean, which one of y'all wasn't listening to that? It's not true, right? When we say things like always and never and you can't, like these, we put these blanket statements out there on things that really that we're trying to cover up with a Band-Aid instead of just rawly saying, I'm going through a season right now where I feel very lonely. And so it may come across that I'm more clingier than normal because around this time last year, my mom died and I'm still navigating that. Or she died 20 years ago and I'm still navigating that grief because grief doesn't have an expired date. Grief is not like milk. It doesn't have an expiration date. Neither does disappointment. Neither does pain, neither does death. None of these things schedule. They don't call you and see if you can schedule dying on Thursday. Like it just doesn't happen that way. So there's things that happen to us in this life that we are not prepared for. And then there's things that even if we think we're prepared for, you're never really prepared for it until you're in it. And so if you haven't had the space or the practice to be able to show up fully as who you are, and you've always been concerned that the other person, if you show them this, they're going to leave, then you're not giving them the opportunity to stay. And see, this is not in my notes, but this is for somebody. We oftentimes will say, especially as high achievers, because we love a good strategy, honey. We will say it's strategy, the way that I'm moving. But what if it was self-sabotage? See, when you don't allow your person to sit in that thing with you, and then you start creating your own stories about what's happening, that is creating a dynamic and a system for you to self-sabotage, because the other person isn't getting to say their side. The only person who's saying a side is you. And so what ends up happening is we think that we are strategically positioning ourselves, or we're strategically leaving things out, or we're strategically not dealing with said thing. And what is actually happening is we are now not allowing our person in. So you're telling them what they never do, but what if you never let them in? See how that works? So we will do what we call in the sales world, we call it assuming the sale. When we assume the sale, we oftentimes talk ourselves out of it. So when we talk about letting people be there for us, what if that person isn't has no intention of leaving, but maybe you do? That's why you're projecting it. I know. I know this done hurt somebody already, but just stick with me. I got you. I got you. So I want to talk about the three wounds that show up first when it comes to arguing. So the three wounds that often surface first are abandonment. And this shows up as overreacting to small changes in behavior. I mean, whenever you used to use, whenever you got off work, when you was on your lunch break, you would call me right at 12:00. Now you're calling at 12:05. And you did it 3 times this week. Stay with me. Or anxiety, when communication shifts. I'm not hearing from you. I don't know what's going on. You don't care about me anymore. But what's really being said is, I'm scared that you're going to leave me emotionally. That abandonment doesn't always, it always seems to happen to me. And so I would much rather self sabotage and be in control than to allow you to be in this space and me to tell you what I'm feeling. Because what if abandonment doesn't always mean that someone is physically walking out? Most of us, that's what we're afraid of. But sometimes what is really happening is you're dealing with a person who they had a parent who was emotionally unavailable. And so because of that, they have what we call an avoidant attachment style. And typically, people who have an avoidant attachment style, they stonewall their emotions, meaning they hide behind them, they don't share, they shut down, they get very distant when intimacy is being required, not an option. And anytime vulnerability is being demanded, they tend to move differently because love for them felt very inconsistent. And so when you see men and women who typically are in they grew up with this avoidant pattern in their household in their childhood, you will notice that even in the relationship with them, affection feels very conditional. Like, I give you a hug when you come home with straight A's. I tell you you're great when you bring me home your check. I don't tell you that if you're just bringing yourself home. So because of that, avoidant people are you typically attract the opposite of what you are. And so if you are an anxious attachment style person, and we'll have to do some in depth, I'm gonna have to do some in-depth teaching on this, or an avoidant, and you're in a relationship, you have a person who's avoidant who needs space to process, and you have an anxious person who needs to talk about it right now, because an anxious person is always worried about abandonment. An avoidant person is more so, they don't necessarily worry about abandonment because they're gonna self-sabotage. So they are more so worried about losing control. That's the thing they worry about. They worry about losing control. What happens if I lose control? And so their delayed response to you can sometimes feel like abandonment, especially if you are an anxious attachment style person and you need to know right now. You know those. No, we're going to talk about it right now. Those types of people with an avoidant, the dynamic, it makes you have to show up differently for that person. And you have to communicate because Needing space to process, there's nothing wrong with that. What is wrong is when you don't communicate that's what you need. So it's not wrong that your person needs time to process. I am a person who is a recovering avoidant a person, attachment style, and I would say that for me, I have to process things with time and space. Like I process backwards. So I will take everything that you said and I will look at the events that have led up to the moment. And as I'm going through the events, I'm thinking about what was said, what was needed, what was not needed. How did you navigate this? And I'm looking at all these different things because they help me to process my thoughts. And then I can come back and say, hey, like, let's talk about this. This is heavy. Let's talk about this in about a day or two. I need time to process it. Sometimes I need longer to process it. It just depends. But communicating that helps to silence the noise of the inner critic of the person that is in relationship with you. So let's talk about the second old wound that comes up and surfaces first whenever you're in an argument with your partner or just person, period. The second one, first one we talked about was abandonment. The second one is rejection. Now, honey, this rejection one shows up as defensiveness. Your partner gives feedback, you hear criticism, they say that hurt me, you hear you're not enough. Rejection wounds will make correction feel like condemnation. And so anytime you feel rejected, what your heart is hearing and what your ears are hearing are oftentimes two different things. And the reason I say what your heart is hearing is because one of the things that I do with my clients is I teach them how to listen with heart. Because when you listen from a place of love, meaning you're looking at this person, you're hearing them, or you're reading their message, you're reading it from the space of this person loves me. They're sharing this with me because they love me. Because I think oftentimes we, especially in relationships with people, when we feel like we real close to them, we start having entitlement and expectations. All right, let's go back to what I said at the beginning. We come into relationships with our father's tones and our mother's expectations. So we have expectations. And we come in with these expectations that because we're so close to this person, this is how they should respond to us. This is what they should be doing. But was that ever communicated? Because if not, this is why we're being re-triggered. So when we look at rejection specifically, rejection makes people feel condemnation. It feels like condemnation, which feels like shame, right? Like you're calling me out. You're saying you're deserting me, right? Or you don't want me, you don't care about me anymore. You're doing these types of things when the truth is that's not what they said. And so oftentimes if you are in a relationship with someone who has unhealed rejection wounds, they will always reply back very defensive because they want to argue, and they are going to argue the details because they can't tolerate the feeling of being rejected. Some of the people that struggle with this the most are my avoidants. That is why we self-sabotage. And what we will do, because we want to be in control, is we will make it about us, because rejection really makes it about you. It's not about us anymore. Because, and I remember when God dealt with me with rejection back in 2021, actually. Yeah, 2021. And he dealt with me rejection because I didn't know that I had a rejection wound, quite honestly. But I did. But it wasn't mine. It was someone else's from my childhood that I had carried on along into my adulthood. And what I identified was that I wanted to be, if I can control, if the reason you chose that was because of something I did, then I felt like I could control and change that narrative. So follow me. If you said, um, I don't like to talk to you because you always want to just talk business and I don't get to know who you are truly. And that's what I'm feeling as this rejection of why you don't want to be with me, right? Just giving you a case in point, an example. Then what that does is, to me, it tells me, oh, well, if you just start sharing more about this, and this will actually change that. And it's because we're solution, you got, as high achievers, we're solution based type of people. We're always thinking of the solution, right? Because people come to us for those things. So we do the same things for us. So sometimes what we will do is we'll make rejection about us with when really rejection is about the other person. It has nothing to do with you. You are feeling um, you're getting the hint of what's happening based on a decision that's been made. So what does that mean? This person already feels like you're too good for them and that you're out of their league. And so because they don't believe that they are worth being in a relationship that with a person of your caliber, they will say to you, this isn't working. I don't believe we shouldn't be together. Um, or what have you. And so they'll put it off on you. We shouldn't, you're not it. You're not my person, right? Putting it off on you when the truth is, no, you don't think you're worthy of this kind of love. You're getting creme de la creme. And because you're getting champagne, darling, you are accustomed to getting beer. And so because you're accustomed to beer and you're not accustomed to champagne, because you do not believe that you're worthy of a champagne lifestyle, now you want this other person to come down to that level. And so what you do, you will, because you feel like you can't measure up, then what you do is you dumb down. So now I'm hearing it and I'm thinking, so what's wrong with me? Because rejection makes you start thinking that, like, oh, what's wrong with me? But what if nothing's wrong with you? It's something wrong with the way they're seeing it. And so what we will do is a lot of times, especially for women, we'll internalize it and we'll try to fix these things about ourselves, or we'll try to alter who we are to accommodate this other person. When the truth is, they're not even solving for that problem. They haven't truly identified what the real problem is. So it's almost too presumptuous for you to think that it's about you. And I remember when God showed me that, he said, Lauren, you're making this about you when it's about them. And the reason you're making it about you is because if it's about you and it's an issue with you, you think that you can change it because you can control whatever that issue is. You don't like my hair long, I can make it short. You don't like it brown, I can make it blonde. I can, you're thinking because we want to be in this control space. And so I had to really sit with that and identify, like, oh, wait. So when this person is telling me that uh, that they can't show up in this relationship in this way, it's not them saying that I'm too much, it's them saying they don't have enough for this role. It's a capacity issue, not not a character issue. It's not a character flaw of mine, it's a capacity issue of theirs, right? And instead of us digging deeper into those types of conversations to kind of really understand, well, why is that? Why would you say that? Why do you feel that way? Because we are so busy making it about ourselves that we don't stop to think, like, no, something else is going on here. So that's the second place that we see it. It comes up in rejection. And then with another cheat code, I'm gonna give y'all this cheat code here, is when you bring it to that person, like, no, actually that sounds like self-sabotage. And let me tell you something about defensive people. Defensive people love to defend what they love to defend what they know is a lie, masking as a truth. And they also love to defend what they know they can prove. So when you bring it to them, and if you say, hey, you know what, that really sounds like fear and self-sabotage. It sounds like you're in a pattern of self-sabotaging and fear. I understand what you said, but my heart is hearing self-sabotage. Um, and if they don't rebuttal that with vulnerability, you're on the money. That is exactly what's happening. And they probably have not even identified that that's what's happening, because what they are looking for is not in alignment with what's happening. And we see this a lot. And this is so not in my notes, but this is so on point. I see a lot of times in relationships when I'm working with couples is that we will say we want one thing. We will say we want a new thing, but the way that we measure it is about by our old ways. I'm gonna say that again. You'll say you want a new thing in this relationship, but the way you measure the person is by old ways. So if you're looking for a feeling, God ain't looking for a feeling. He's looking at matter of fact. He ain't looking. Some of us be looking for that. I mean, I just, I need to how I feel around them. That could be anxiety that you're feeling around them. Your feelings aren't facts. They are there to keep you human and humble, but they're not facts. And if you make your decisions based on your feelings, they could potentially be fatal to the relationship that you said you wanted. And I'm not going to study all that today. I'm going to do a different segment on that and break down that story of Moses and how he allowed his feelings to help him hear the last thing he heard, but not the last thing God said. Right. So those of us who are in our Bibles, real quick, Moses he struggled with speech. He already had an inadequacy around that. He felt self-conscious about his ability to speak because he stuttered. And then God calls him to go and speak to Pharaoh, right? And then he has to go and do this multiple times, not once, multiple times. And then he leads the people out of Egypt, and he's got the Israelites and he's led them out. And now they're complaining. They're no longer slaves, but they're no longer slaves. They're free, but now they're complaining because they can't predict when the food is going to come. But God had already promised them manna every single day, but they were yet complaining. Come on, that's some of us. God promised you something, but you still complaining about it because you ain't seen it yet, or you don't know when it's coming. You don't know the time. You got it since you know tracking numbers. So now you emailing God, hey, can I get the UPS tracking number on this? And so they're doing this, and Moses goes to God the first time about their complaints. God allowed him to strike the rock. Water came out. They could hush their mouth. They do it again. Moses mad. He go over there because they get on his nerves. And what happens? God tells him speak to the rock. But Moses was so frustrated and overwhelmed with his own emotions. He did the last thing he heard, but not the last thing God said. And instead of him speaking to the rock, he strikes it. And God still allows the water to come because they were thirsty. But he also marched Moses right on up out of that position. And why am I telling you this? Is because when we try to move from our feelings, your feelings are not facts, and they are fatal if you focus on them. Because imagine if Moses would have focused on the fact of the matter. The fact of the matter was, I told you to speak. But what the last thing you heard, because you thought I was going to tell you to do the same thing again, because, oh, that's a word for somebody, because I had the same materials. You had a rock, you had a staff. So you think I already know what he's going to say. Strike it, right? Know it all. Think you know everything. And you did not get to that promised land. Read your Bible. That's why we don't move off of feelings. Because feelings can be indicators, but they should not be decision makers. They can be indicators, but they should never be your decision makers. Because when you make your decisions off of feelings, they can potentially be fatal to your destiny. Because although Moses did all this stuff leading up to, he did not get into the promised land. And you never hear him being spoken of again. So you want to be careful about these feelings of rejection that you take in, because just because you feeling it don't mean it's matter of fact the truth. So take that for what it's worth, because that was not in my notes, but it's for somebody who need to hear it. And then let's go to number 3, control wounds. Ooh, control wounds usually come from chaos. And if you grew up in instability, unpredictability, or emotional turbulence, you have learned how to control, like how control equals safety. Now, is that true? No. But is it true to the person who has type A control issues? Yes. You know why? Because they feel like they're getting to make a choice. Control makes you feel like you're getting to make a choice that you're really not getting to make. But it feels like it, right? So we equate it to safety. So we say control equals safety. If you put it up on a whiteboard. Control does not equal safety. And so it actually equals fear. But this is where you see it. Now you're micromanaging. Oh, come on. Let's talk about who that is. You micromanage. You're correcting tone on people. You dominate conversations. You shut down anything that feels out of your control and you call it leadership. I know I'm on somebody's feelings. You calling it leadership. It's not leadership, it's fear. And no one has probably said this to you, but here's the truth. It's fear. And the danger with that is moving from the space of control, is that you never are free to be who God called you to be. You're never really free to experience fulfillment. And so what you do, you find yourself being everybody's savior while no one can save you, but you're not open to it. It's not that people around you don't want to help you. You're not open to it. And so anytime you're not vulnerable and allowing people to come in and find the truth of who you are, the matter of fact of who you are, you're robbing them of the opportunity to fully show up for you. So then you start saying stuff like, you never listen, you don't care. You say these things because, quite honestly, you're projecting on them what you've never allowed them to do. Where has the space been made for them to show up for you? You're so busy trying to look perfect and be perfect, because why? That's what got you that provisional and conditional love at home, is when you were perfect. So now you're looking for someone to spark a flame, when God's like, you know why you at peace with them? You looking to be at pieces. Peace and pieces ain't the same, because you're not in pieces. You're getting to bring all of you here, and now you're ready to self-sabotage. Why? Because you don't feel like you're in control. And so that's a very dangerous place to be. And for those of us who follow God's word, who believes God's word, I want to take you back to the garden. You remember what happened after Adam and Eve had ate that apple, and God brought that curse, and he spoke it to the woman. He told her two things. He said, you are going to have painful pregnancies. And we do. I've had 2 children. One of them natural with no meds, and one of them with an epidural. I know pain. And they were both 8 pounds or close to. So we know pain. He said it's going to be painful. The other thing he said was, you are going to want to control your husband. Go read it in your New Living Translation. You're going to want to control him, but he will rule over you. So this control thing, it's connected to power. Remember, the serpent sold them on being more powerful than God. And they evidently wanted it, because if they didn't, they wouldn't have bit it. They would have never ate the apple, because the sales tactic was, bite this apple. You're going to have more knowledge than God. He just doesn't want you to be more powerful than him. What is power connected to? Control. They didn't realize they were in liberty, freedom. They were free to roam. They had dominion over all things. Adam had named all the things. He was already in freedom. He already was free. It's no different than Harriet Tubman saying that, thank y'all for giving me the Nobel Peace Prize, saying I helped to free these slaves, but I could have really freed more slaves had they known they were a slave. When people don't even know they're a slave, there's no awareness. So they still stuck. They don't need a cage. Their mindset is the cage. They don't need a prison. They're imprisoned up here. So when we're in control, you're playing into the devil's hand. God said, I want you free. Vulnerability gets you free. It's an art. My third book is called Vulnerability, the Art of Letting Go. Because it is an art, meaning you don't just put it on that. You don't just paint one time and now you're Picasso. No. You gotta get some different brushes. You may have to do some different lines. It takes time. And so you have to practice it more than once. And so here's the danger when we get so entrapped to being in control, is this is what we're not recognizing. You don't recognize that you are wounding and attacking the person God sent to love you and heal those things. And when both people are bleeding, arguments escalate fast. And two abandonment wounds, their argues sound like one person yelling, because you don't care no more. The other person saying, yes, I do. One other person saying, then prove it. The other person saying, I'm trying. That's two rejection wounds arguing together. Right? We have an abandonment wound arguing. Then we got the rejection wound arguing, saying you too sensitive. And then the other person saying, well, you too harsh. And then you got two control wounds that are arguing. And one of them says, why do you have to control everything? One person saying that, the other person saying, because I don't get to do nothing. It's just done. Right? All of that is exhausting. And the issue isn't that you're not compatible, it's that you know how to communicate. And not that you don't even know. And let's go even further. You are unaware of what the real issue is. You're thinking that you're arguing about you didn't text me about what time you was coming home tonight, that you was going to be 20 minutes late, and you done did that like 2 or 3 times this week. That's not what you're arguing about at all. You're arguing about the fact that your partner feels like they don't know where you are. There has not been full transparency about what's happening. And so now they have started to make up these ideas of what could potentially be happening. And if you're dealing with an abandonment person who has an anxious attachment style, they are worried that you are preparing to go. Now they have created this whole story and you better be looking crazy. Or you with the person who's avoided. And they've created a story too. And now they're ready to leave before you do. And they telling you, I'm just not going to say nothing. And so now there can't be intimacy because there is disconnection. And if you cannot be unified in the body, in oneness, in intimacy, you can't be connected. And the only way to have that is you have to be in truth. And when we're not in truth, we're in lies. So let's talk about how to recognize these real issues, because I want you to be able to see this, and I want you to be able to implement these practical things. I'm going to give you 3 questions to ask yourself whenever you're in the middle of a conflict. And these are some things you say out loud. You say quietly to yourself. Don't be just yelling it out loud for some of y'all who are going to try this at home. I want you to take inventory as the person that's communicating. I want you to ask yourself 3 questions. As that person is talking, what am I actually feeling right now? As they're talking, because it's nothing like getting it in real time of what are you really feeling? Because again, feelings are indicators. They're not decision makers. So what are you feeling right now that you're not communicating? Is it anger or is it fear? It's the second one. Is it anger? Is it fear? What is it? Is it frustration or is it hurt? Because frustration is defensiveness and guarded. Hurt is vulnerability. It gets to the root. And most of us high achievers, we do not like to say, I'm hurt. And then I want you to also ask yourself, When have I felt this before? When have I felt when has this come up for me? Because a lot of times you are having a conversation with the 10-year-old person of your partner. You're not even talking this grown man, ma'am, you're not talking to this grown man. Sir, you're not talking to this grown woman who is 45 years old. You are talking to her 10-year-old self. Because oftentimes when you have felt this before, it was not with the person you're standing in front of. It's with the person who's not in the room. And that is where you have learned some of these tactics. And then when you identify that it was before them, then you need to ask yourself, what story am I telling myself? Am I telling myself that they don't value me? Am I telling myself that I'm not important to them? Am I telling myself that I just shouldn't worry about it, that I'm alone? I can only depend on me anyway. It's not safe here. What are you telling yourself? Because depending on what you're telling yourself is going to determine how you communicate it. And most importantly, how the other person experiences it. Because when you can identify the wounds, then the arguments can soften. I tell men all the time because I tend to coach men who are in relationships with type A, high performing, very successful women. And oftentimes they're like, she's a busybody. I try to do this, I try to do that. Nothing seems to be enough for her. I just don't understand. And then I have to ask them, what is her childhood wound story? Because that's what she's solving for. And when people are not aware of that, they'll have you solving for something that's not even a problem. I.e., you didn't text me to let me know you were going to be late again tonight. And now you're having all these arguments. And so you're trying to solve for, well, let me text her next time. It ain't about you texting her next time. That's not the issue. The issue is it popped up late. There was very limited communication or information given about what's happening. And now this person has created the narrative that you playing in their face. You doing something you ain't got no business doing. You never show up for me. Right? They're feeling abandoned. And it's because they're in the dark. So you texting them is not going to make it better. What's going to make it better is maybe you share a calendar. If you tell them, babe, it's always fine. Liz, if you ever have a question about what's happening, you have free reign to ask me. I'm always open to hearing you. That's the only way you're going to get on the same page. And so let's change your language. So instead of saying you never show up for me, you can say, now that you've identified what the issue really is, and you can say it like this: when plans change suddenly, it triggers something old in me, and I start to feel unimportant. Now that, ladies, is vulnerability. And vulnerability heals what defensiveness inflames. Because you're owning it. A lot of us are expecting people to know stuff that they don't know. And then we're mad because they don't know it. Who is going to tell them? They don't know what's coming up in your body, where you're feeling the tension at when this happens. They just know it triggered something, and now they're dealing with the response of your trigger. And instead of saying, hey, I really want to spend time with you. I've been going through a really tough time and it's been really lonely for me. What does your calendar look like within the next week or two? Maybe we can make it a routine that every Wednesday at 3 we check in. That sounds way better than, I see you doing everything for everybody else, but when it comes to me, it just seemed like it's funny how me and y'all know when a woman say it's funny how that shoulder be going, that neck getting going, what time it is, and it ain't nothing about this about to be soft, okay? Nothing about the conversation is about to be soft. It's just funny to me how, but they not laughing. How you find time for everybody else but me, ma'am? Let me just go ahead and tell you, a man doesn't want to be demanded and commanded to spend time with you because now it feels like a chore. It doesn't fit. It feels obligation. It feels like slave. It does not feel like peace. It does not feel like option. It doesn't feel like choice. It feels like command. I don't want to spend time with you like that because now I feel like I'm on eggshells because now I have to alter schedule because you put a demand on it versus being able to hear your vulnerability and make the necessary adjustments because people will adjust. They love you, but you don't give them time to when you're demanding them as if they are a dog. I know I said it for him. And so these are the issues that we're seeing. And I want to be very clear. Healing your wound is your responsibility. It is not your spouse's responsibility. Your spouse can support you, but they cannot heal you. Only one man I know can heal you is God. But you got to be aware that there is a problem. They cannot fix what they did not break. And scripture tells us that, you know, it tells us about guarding our heart, but even deeper than that, not weaponizing it. God will expose what's in you, not to shame you, but to free you. And that's where vulnerability is. Some of us, we keep praying for a better partner and asking God to like make this person better when God's like, well, I'm really just trying to heal your, overextending issues. I'm trying to heal you from people pleasing. I'm trying to heal you from saying yes to things that you should say no to. I'm trying to heal you from not setting healthy boundaries and not being vulnerable about where you are and allowing people to take advantage of you. I'm trying to heal you. So maybe you should stop praying for God to change them and for him to heal you. Because what if that's what he's trying to do? You cannot change another person, but you can change you. But that change comes with a decision. And you can't make a decision about something you ain't aware of. You can't get something off your teeth. If you got old lipstick on your teeth, you can't get it off your teeth if you don't know it's there. And who sees it? Either the mirror's going to tell you or a person that's walking up to you, but it won't be you. You never feel, women who wear lipstick, we don't feel lipstick on our teeth. It's when someone tells us that it's there. Then we can do something about it. But see, you got to be open to somebody telling you that it's there. And most of us are not, which is why we are defensive, which is why we are trying to argue our point, because we would rather be right about the person and the problem than to learn how to be right with the person that we're with. We would rather be in pieces than in peace, and would be rather chasing flames instead of just sitting in the flow of what God is doing. So this episode was heavy. I did not expect it to be this long, but clearly somebody needed to get this. So I'm going to leave you with this because this thing is good. The next time you are in conflict, I do not want you to ask yourself, how do I win this? I want you to ask yourself, what pain is speaking right now? Because if you can identify the wound, then you can interpret the cycle. And here's the question I want you to sit with this week, because the conflict may take a while to come up. But this week, I want you to analyze it. I want you to say, think to yourself, are you arguing about the problem or protecting old pain? Are you arguing about the problem or are you really trying to protect your old pain? It's time that you start noticing your triggers. And that's why being busy is not as important as you think. It's very distractive. People who are always busy are very distracted. Those are very much so your avoidance, because we're trying to avoid all things. And so we stay very busy, because when you're busy, you ain't got to think about it. But it doesn't go away because you stop thinking about it. It just waits until you're ready to think about it. And so I don't want you to be so busy that you miss out on what God's trying to heal. And when you think about these things, I want you to trace them back to where was the first time you felt it. The law, we call that the law of first mention. We're studying the Bible. Go back to the first time you felt it, because the first time is the root. What your partner is experiencing is the fruit. The first time you experienced it That's the root. But what your partner is experiencing, that's the fruit. And if you don't ever get down to the root, you'll never be able to understand the fruit. So I want you to take ownership of that, because the strongest relationships are not built because people never argue. They're built by people who are brave enough to heal. So, man, this was so good. I want you to share this episode with someone. If this resonated with you, drop it in the comments. Let me know, like, oh, baby, this was the clock that. And send this to your partner. Send this to your partner. They will be glad to maybe do some introspective work on themselves as well. This isn't just about blaming one person. It's about owning our part so we can see how God takes our pieces and makes them masterpieces. So I want to invite you, before we end out, to my women, to my ladies. I have a master class that I am hosting. You do not want to miss it. It is called um, Tired, Strong but Tired. And we know you strong but you tired. So I did this amazing masterclass session, and it is for women who carry too much, who say yes too many times and too often, and they do not have healthy boundaries to protect the version of them that God is grooming and preparing for them to fully become. And so if you have been feeling like I am tired and you are over it and you like, I just need some help, I'm helping you. Okay. Click the link below in the comments, in the show notes, and you can find all the details about this masterclass. It's amazing. And I know it's going to be a blessing to you. So until next time, I'll see you right here, same time, same place, on purpose. Peace.